Oh, I got 6 o'clock. All right, I'll just sign it. Perfect. Good evening, everyone. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's okay, that's okay, we're okay.
All right. Well, thank you for everybody for coming tonight. I have the schedule in front of me, but
The agenda is just Mr. Gleason, if you
That's what
guys
I
want to
thought,
give your
yeah.
presentation.
We'll do a roll call to make sure we have a quorum.
oh, that's right. Usually Angela does it, but Christie is excused. Palmer was excused. Watson,
Present.
Strubing.
Here,
Is that right?
Strubing.
Strubing.
Yep.
Sorry. I thought somebody said. Thomas.
Here.
Deacon.
Here.
Gardner here. So, all right, everything's good. Mr. Gleason.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to come tonight. I also wanted to say that with me, I have Dawn Pooler. She'll come up a little bit later. But we'll get started. I just want to say a little bit about the process that we go through. I think a lot of people know this, but I think it's helpful just when there are concerns sometimes that we're not having opportunity for input or transparency. Like I get frustrated when I hear that because I'm going to go over how we feel like we do try to accomplish that, but it just sometimes it never feels like it's enough. So we start early in the fall through December, meeting with each administrator and director to review largely their non-labor budget, the pieces of the budget they control. Dawn does an excellent job sitting with each of these folks and kind of asking some hard questions like, what are your needs for the coming year? And what would it look like if we did this or this? So this year we approached it basically asking all of these folks who manage aspects of the budget to come in at a 0% increase for the parts of the budget they control. And we asked the question, what would the impact if we do that? And pretty universally, they were, all these principals and managers and directors were able to kind of move some things around and make it work without any real negative benefit, negative impact on kids and programs. There were a couple of places where it was impossible, and we'll talk about those later. One was athletics, largely because of officials' fees, which we don't have any control over. They tell us what we have to pay, and we have to pay it. There were a few cases like that, but for the most part, the schools and the sites and the departments came in pretty close to 0%. So then we put out a call around November for our budget advisory, citizens advisory committee. We've sort of been tweaking that the last few years to have that be as productive as possible. I know there were some frustrations last year with kind of how it went because I will own it. I don't think I did a good enough job at the front of that process, sort of explaining what we were looking for from people as we transitioned from what it used to be to what we wanted it to be. But we did put out a call. We had a group of people that met 6 times between December and March to provide us input. And the kind of input we're looking for is big picture input, not like how do we spend money on this position, but more like what kind of tax increase, what big picture things, are you seeing? What could you go out in the community and support? So that was a productive process. This year we left that group with a recommended budget, but we still felt like there was work to do. We didn't think that it was where it needed to be even before we sent it to the Finance and Facilities Committee. So then it went to Finance and Facilities on March 12th. And I just want to say that both of those processes, both the BAC process of 6 meetings, Finance and Facilities are public meetings. Public is welcome to any of them. All of the minutes are posted as we meet. They're on our website. Anyone can go back and look at it. So if folks are saying, well, we didn't see the budget. Well, maybe we could have put it in front of people better, but it's there, and it was there for people to see if they wanted to see it and be involved. So then on March 12th, a significant development there. The board members on Finance and Facilities chose not to make any further changes to that budget as far as any cuts or any program changes or staffing reductions. But they did decide to put an extra $1 million out of our fund balance into the budget, into the revenue, so that it would lower the tax burden. Because one of the pieces of input we got from some of the folks on BAC is fund balance is very, I don't want to say controversial, but there's a lot of opinions and feelings about fund balance. Some will tell us that we our fund balance is too high and we should spend it. Other people will say, well, you don't want to be relying on fund balance, so be careful how you use it. And so we recognize all of that, and we're trying to walk a line of not asking taxpayers for more money when we've already raised it and it's in the fund balance, but also not overspending the fund balance or over-relying on it. So we're trying to walk a line. So this year, I believe we're right around 5 million out of our fund balance, which people will say, what is your fund balance? Well, I think, as you know, if you manage your budget, it's a moving target, because we can't tell you right now what's going to be left at the end of the year to replenish, or how much will we have used, how much have we used, how much will go back into the fund balance. But it could be around $10 million. Okay, it could be that high, might be less. But we're also recommending taking 5 million of that and putting it towards next year's budget. So that would take that and cut it in half, right? What we've been seeing as a trend the last couple of years is, even though we're trying to budget precisely, not over budget, we're still finding we're not spending that budget down. And Dawn has actually spent a lot of time this last year trying to really analyze where are the cost centers that we're not spending, what's driving that. And I do think it comes back to often salaries and benefits and unfilled positions, because we have to budget for the things that we need, and then we don't always fill them because we can't fill them. And in an organization this large, it doesn't take long before that starts to add up. So that's a puzzle we haven't totally solved, but we're working on it. So finance and facilities left with a $5 million, in an extra million to make it 5 million from the fund balance. At that time, the tax increase was going to be a 5.82 average, but some positive things happened between then and when we presented it to the full board. Our health insurance was a moving target. The first information we got was plan on it being up to 20% increase. And we believed it, because we got hit really hard the last 2 years, I think 14 and 18 or something. So then we got another communication that said, no, it shouldn't be higher than 14. So Dawn made adjustments, and I think 14 was where we stood in March. Then the week before, the board meeting where they considered the budget, we got more, actually it was the Friday before the meeting. So we sent the board the budget, assuming a 14% increase in health insurance, and then the Friday before, we found out it was going to be 8.96. So we also prepared a version of the budget with that accurate number, and the board chose to move forward with that number. So they adjusted it at that meeting to accept that change. And so what that ended up doing is bringing the burden to taxpayers down to 4.59, which is where we stand today. And then we also approached, and we'll talk more about this later, we approached our facilities issues and some large projects differently in the form of a bond. But I'll circle back to that. So what I'll do at this time is go through the packet that you guys have, I think. Page 2 is just some quick academic data. We did this last year and it was well received, so we thought we'd do it again. It's a work in progress, right? We have a very mixed population of students. We have a pretty high special ed population. Every kid gets tested. We don't pick and choose who gets tested. I'm just going to say we're never going to be at the top of the testing ranks in the state. It's just not going to happen, but we can always be better. This first chart, it's very small, but it's generally showing the main through-year assessment, which is the main state test. The left of the line chart there is the blue line is MACD 6, and the red line is the state. And for those of you who can see it, we kind of mirror just below. There's a couple of points where we match the state average, but we're generally running just below the state average. And that is the first one is reading, English language arts. And the bar graph there next to it shows places where if at each grade, how many students are above the benchmark. And 60% above the benchmark is a sort of a goal you're shooting to attain. And many of the, I think at least half of the grade levels listed there, 4th, 5th, and 7th, are exceeding that goal of 60% at or above the benchmark. And the others are progressing. 8th grade's a little bit lower, but the others are 55 or higher. So that's trending in the right direction with our reading scores on that measure. The bottom graph is math. This is something we've recognized as an issue. We implemented a new curriculum. I think it's 3 years ago now. And I'll talk about that in a second. So the left chart is the bar graph for math from the state test. And you can see that the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade is tending to perform better than 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. what we feel is that some of that is that new math program is starting to have some impact, and it just hasn't pushed its way through yet. There's a lot of work being done on the curriculum between 5th and 6th grade and how to join that, because, going back to when I was at the middle school, it's always been a challenge. I don't want to say a problem, but a challenge to come from, 4, I think 5 now different elementary schools with 5th graders and having them all come to 6th grade together, and they get different experiences, right? So how do we continue to work on that? The chart on the right there is specifically the benchmark assessment that goes with the new math program. And what that shows is that last year, the first column are the percentages of kids that were hitting 70% proficiency or higher. And then it's this current year, that same measure at those same grades. And you can see that generally the younger students are doing better than the older students, the students who are just learning the program. And then you can also see that every grade level improved from last year to this year. So we see that as a positive sign in math improvement. Go to page 3, we have some high school metrics here. The first one is early college enrollment. I think it's really hard to measure the reading and math engagement and assessment in high school, just because the way the courses are set up and everything, and they're so varied. And high school students are notoriously difficult to test, because frankly, I remember being a junior in high school and I was a pretty good student, and I kind of blew off the state test because I was like, whatever, this isn't going to help me get into college. I don't get graded on this. So it's a challenge. So we try to look at that, but we look at some other measures. We have our highest number of students that are involved in early college. These are no-cost college courses. They can be online or in person, and kids who finish their high school requirements, or they can take them along with their high school requirements, can participate, and they don't have to pay anything, and they can count them to opt out of some of their introductory classes in college. So we had 53 different students participate in 105 early college classes this year.
Does the school have to pay for this, or is the university give it for free?
I think, I don't know the answer to that exactly. I think there is some cost, but it's minimal. And I think either the school pays or we work out an arrangement with the university. It's not a significant cost if it is a cost.
Okay. No, I love that kids are taking advantage of that.
And it behooves the universities, right, the colleges, because that it gets the kids in the foot in the door, and they're more likely to continue, and so it benefits them too. AP scores is another area that I believe it used to be reported as part of like the NAEP, but then they changed how they reported it, and that was one of the reasons that Maine's the NAEP is a national measure that all the states are compared on, and Maine started to drop a couple of years ago, and one of the things that I have been told contributed to that is they stopped asking about AP participation, and Maine has always had a pretty high advanced placement participation. So Bonnie Eagle has a pretty good participation in these advanced placement courses. So it just kind of shows the number of students that are scoring a 3 or higher, which is what you need to be passing on the advanced placement score. So there's a history of that, and it shows that we had 100 AP students, and then 68% of them scored a 3 or higher, which I think is pretty good. So we offer these opportunities for kids. And again, if you get these scores in the AP exam, you can opt out of courses in college, and it can save you to not have to take an introductory chemistry or whatever it might be. And then our graduation rate is something that I think we need to be proud of and shout from the hilltops, because you can see this trend going back to, I think, 2015, where we've consistently been below the state average in the last 2 years. So 2024 is there, 2025 is not a dot on that chart. Oh yeah, it is the red, the main dot isn't there, but the main dot is once again equal or below. We have passed or we're at or just above the graduation rate for the state, 87% for 2 years in a row. So I think that's a pretty big achievement, and we're pretty proud of that. So those are some academic pieces, and now we'll move on to the money. This first, page 4, is a history of the general fund budget increase year to year, and this doesn't include school nutrition or adult ed, so we'll get to that. So you can see year over year we're 5.74, and if you remember, I told you that our non-labor budget was largely 0% increase. So these increases, we'll talk more about it in each of the areas, are largely salary and benefits and a few other things that are sort of out of our control. Number 5 is showing the school nutrition increases or history, and then the increase, and then adult ed. And school nutrition, I feel, I have this memory of standing here last year and talking to someone who asked a question. The driving force continuing in school nutrition is the cost of food. Like, I think anybody at home who shops for their own home could tell you food costs more. We feed a lot of kids. There is some reimbursement and revenue that comes through the school nutrition program, but we have to budget for what we spend. So this is a 13.5% increase year over year, largely by food, some equipment costs. We will get some revenue back to offset that, but that's the increase. That's what we feel we're going to be spending on food to feed our kids breakfast and lunch. Adult ed has a minimal increase. We have a pretty robust adult ed program. We have a new director this year who's brought some different ideas in, different creativity. And I think we get a good bang for our buck out of our adult ed program. There's a lot of enrichment courses that people participate in. We have about 24 to 25-ish students that participate in the equivalency program. The name has changed over the years. I don't want to say it wrong, but basically getting a GED or a high set or a high school equivalency. And that's a great ceremony to go to, and it's a mix of kids, like some of the last year's graduating class, kids that I remember when they were in 6th and 7th grade who are now have come back to finish their diplomas, and then or adults like they're all adults, I guess. Some of them, I still think of them as kids, but even 40, 50, 60-year-old people who've decided to go back and finish their equivalency. So there's a great participation in our adult ed program. And also there are some revenue associated with that. Also, some of these enrichment courses, but it's not like a money-making. It just offsets a little bit of the costs. So then if you look on page 6, this is the total budget. It's all of an articles. It's the adult ed and school nutrition. And so that's our year-over-year increase, all parts is 6.02. And I'll go through each article briefly, but again, you're going to hear the theme of salary and benefits being the drivers to that change, with a few other things that are significant. And then the next page is the assessment calculation, and I'm trying to make sure to say this plain and loud, and I think you folks all know this. We don't choose what the towns pay, like for percentages. The state tells us that. It comes through on the ED 279. They do a 3-year average of valuation of the properties in the towns. I don't exactly know how they calculate it. What I've heard is it doesn't exactly match what you use for valuation, so they have numbers and adjust them and use different mill rates. But at the end of the day, there's a certain amount that we have to have the towns raise, and the state tells us how to charge each town, and it varies widely. I want to say the last year, I guess I don't remember. This was very different, I think, of which town was paying a higher percentage versus another. So it's 4.59 on average, but when you apply it through that formula that we get, you can see Standish's assessment difference is 4.88, so a little higher than the average, but pretty close to the average. For folks who might not be able to see it, it's 8.15 for Fry Island, for example. Buxton is the low of 3.54. And then I think Dawn calculated, what that might be on a $100,000 evaluation, what that increase could be for folks to expect. And so that looks like 3% on, or basically a $37 difference on $100,000. Just for a minute, I tend to just get rolling, so I'm good. Stop me if you have anything. I'm just going to go quickly through the articles. I won't belabor it, but I think it's important to know what's in them. Article 1 is really the meat of the budget, because this is where regular instruction is Article 1, and so this is where all the teachers and teachers' salaries. A lot of our educational program that impacts kids is in this article, so it's one of the weightier articles. It's a 6.1% increase. We did reduce 6 positions, generally through attrition or non-renewal. Before a teacher reaches their 3rd year, we have to make a decision about whether to hire them again. Once we hire them for a 3rd year, they have what's called a continuing contract. And after that, we have to go through a pretty lengthy process to get rid of them, like through poor performance. Can be done, but it is a challenging process. So we really try to be very thoughtful before we put teachers on that 3rd year contract. One of the things we've been doing for 2 years, and I've recommended we continue to do, is every time there's an opening, before we fill it, do we need it? And I think our principals have been great because 3 of these positions came from the elementary level with principals doing just that. They had someone leave, they didn't fill it, they made it through the year, then we didn't need to put it back in the budget. So this, of those 6 positions, it wasn't, they weren't true cuts or rifts. They're sometimes called an education reduction in force. One of these reductions, though, was like, for example, a guidance counselor at the high school. We have 5 counselors currently, and our population is slipping below 1,000 students. The state tells us that we should have 1 for every 350 students. So even if going from 5 to 4, we're still above that ratio. And the aspect of the department that's kind of taking the hit, and it's not because of the person in the job, but it's, we had a college and career readiness counselor for a number of years, and it's just kind of become a luxury that we don't think the community can afford. And so that role has been sort of restructured back into the grade level counselors are going to share that responsibility. So that's something that it is a loss. I would say that's the closest thing to a program loss that we have in this budget, and I just want folks to be aware of that. But with that person does have a job. The person that's being realigned, there was an opening at an elementary school, and so those positions are K-12, and so we didn't have to let anybody go to accomplish that. Another piece I want to draw your attention to in this article, the last item, added 3 community partner pre-K classrooms. So that addition alone increased this article by about 1.6%, okay? If we took that out and said, okay, we're not going to do it, we would lose revenue. So we would lower the money that's going out, but we'd also lower our revenue coming in from the state. This is a net neutral proposition. We have 3 child care centers that offer pre-K programming. There's Care Bears and Little Tykes met the state's criteria. We have MOUs with them. They're going to take some of our 4-year-olds once we've filled our classrooms, and we will take revenue from the state for those students and then pass that money through to pay the cost of those students' education, not their daycare, but their 4-year-old education. So really the winner is the families in the community. They don't have to pay out of pocket for their 4-year-old if they don't get a spot in the school. They have other options. Standish specifically, we only have 2 classrooms at Edna. Edna Libby is full. We don't have any room to put any more programs there. We've considered putting one at Steep for 4-year-olds, and we had some room, but we didn't have enough kids in Steep Falls to fill the program, and then we'd get into having to bus kids, and it was counterproductive. Little Tykes has a location that it's actually very beneficial the way our bus runs go, and they were a willing partner. So some of the pre-K seats will be at Little Tykes and Standish, or Care Bears also has a Standish location. So my point is, we could cut it, we'd reduce it, but we'd also reduce our revenue. Wouldn't make sense. The rest of it is largely health insurance increases and salary.
So they have to accept the fee that the state is given. They can't just make their own.
They can't name their price. And that was a conversation we had. They were very good. They understood that we couldn't pay more than what we were getting because then it would be expensive and it wouldn't be worth it to do it. But as long as we didn't pay more than what we were getting for those students, then it benefited everybody. So I think that's a great opportunity. Our goal has been to try to expand our early childhood education, thinking it will pay off, because especially in Standish, we were turning away 20 or 30 kids each year, even with 2 classrooms at Edna Libby. So we needed to do something, I felt like, to try to improve that. Buxton, it was similar, not as consistently as many that we were turning away, but similar. Hollis and HBMRE, for whatever reason, we didn't turn away nearly as many kids usually, but we've seen with this initiative, those are 2 areas we've seen more applications for the program, even though overall our applications aren't up over last year, which is also puzzling to me because I thought people would be all over this, but either we don't have as many 4-year-olds or people are just choosing not to go down this road, which is fine. So we'll see how it goes. I think we're right around 140 something applicants, and we normally would have 200 something in a kindergarten class when everybody comes to school, right? So we're getting there. But bottom line is we shouldn't have to turn anyone away. They'll have some option. It might not be their first option, but there'll be an option for everybody this year. Article 2 is special programs, special ed. I won't spend a lot of time, but the real big, two big drivers in this area were we have something that comes up called out-of-district placements. We have students who aren't educated in our district, and often we don't get a choice about that. Sometimes the families will move in. We've never even met the kid, and they're already in a placement that's outside of the school system. And these are often quite high cost. They can be day programs. They can be residential programs. The day programs can be 100, 150,000. The residential programs can be 3, 4, 5, 600,000 for one student. So we happen to have a couple of students in these programs through no fault of ours, I would say, and we're obligated to provide their education. We had to bump this line up to be able to pay for those because we didn't have enough in last year's budget to absorb this. So that's really one of the big drivers in this that leads to that 6.84.
So when they move in like that, and they choose to still go to that school, do we have to provide the transportation, or are they responsible for that?
It depends. There might be, usually they're not close enough for that would be feasible, so it's all part of the package, right? Either the parents take care of it or the school takes care of it, depending. If it's residential, obviously, right, it's not a problem. If it's sweet serve, maybe we would. So it's sort of a mix. We aren't universally obligated to transport, though, if they're like going out of state, because some of these are in like Vermont or something, right? So obviously then that's probably residential, and that would be part of the whole cost. That's why it's high cost, right? Because it includes all of that. So it's a good question. Another thing I just want to highlight, like people sometimes, like last year it came up a lot. There was no additional SRO in this budget. I will say that was a hot button issue last year. I do think the district could use a second SRO, and Buxton's a willing partner, but we're not going there this year. But people talked about increasing social work services instead, and we have like 14 social workers in the district. I'm not complaining, that's good. I think that we're actually on the higher end of districts our size, and I think that's a good thing, but our students have access to those services when they need them. I don't think we need more, but I don't think we should reduce them, but for folks who are concerned we don't have enough, I do think we have a good amount of social work services.
Point of order, just explain SRO for
What's
the
that?
public. Explain SRO.
Oh, yes, School Resource Officer, thank you. And currently we have a Cumberland County School Resource Officer, someone we're very happy with, has been in that role for a couple of years. And you know, what we worry about is that role being too much for one person as it's expanded. I think when it was initially started, it focused primarily on the high school. It's something now where when in this age of school threats and security, it's sort of expanded to being available to the elementary schools and in both York and Cumberland County, and it starts to be a lot for one person just because of the geography of the district. And I talk about, you know, our enrollment going down, but the population that's going down is not necessarily the hard kids, right? The kids who don't make all the best choices. That population is still there, and I wouldn't say they're less than they were when our high school was at 1,400 kids. Right, we probably didn't have a whole lot more of those challenging kids. So I think our SRO still stays busy, you know, with vaping and kids fighting or threatening each other and parking lot issues. And then an elementary school now having to call to say, can you come identify if this is actually a live bullet that this kid brought in his backpack? And so it's just things like that. So it's something I would expect will come back up. But I just wanted to mention the social work service as well. It was on that page. Article 3, easy, we keep $10,000 in there as a placeholder, but for years, the Voc schools, we used to get the money and then pay it back to like Westbrook or Pass and Portland. But now, for a number of years, the money has gone directly to them. So that's what this article used to be for. Now we keep $10,000 just as a contingency. I don't even know what we would necessarily use it for, but we just keep it there just in case something were to come up. Article 4 is other instruction, and people always say, what is this other instruction? Well, it's largely co-curricular, it's sports, it's activities, summer school that's not special ed. We don't have a lot of that, but we do have like a kindergarten jumpstart program that we usually offer that would be, some of that's covered by like title funds, so funds that come from the government, but there are some local costs. And I just want to say this number, it's a 6.99 increase. This is where mileage costs and fees for officials is a big driver in this, as well as we offer a lot for our kids. And we want to make sure that we can fund all those positions when we find people to coach. And Dawn has done a great job of trying to make sure that we have the money and that we're not having to dig around if somebody wants to offer, an activity or club that hasn't been offered before. So that's what's leading to that 6.99% increase. This number would be much higher if we did not have our booster groups. Our booster groups raise so much money for our students. I don't think the school has actually bought uniforms in years because the booster groups are usually fundraising and buying them, and we appreciate them. And people would say, oh, it cuts sports. Well, I can tell you that there would be folks that would have something to say about that, and the cut would be minimal, really, because we're already saving a lot in this area because of the hard work of those booster groups. Article 5 is student and staff support. So this is regular ed social work, guidance, health, library curriculum, instructional technology. This is where I talked about the guidance counselors, actually in this area, not in the other area. There were 6 teaching positions. The one guidance counselor I talked about came out of this area. Social workers are here and in special ed because we have folks that work with just students in special education. Then we have folks that work with regular ed. And so that number 14 I gave you is split across these 2 articles. So this is a smaller increase of 3.5, and that is largely health insurance and salaries, and then the reduction of the 1 position to help offset that. Article 6, system administration, superintendent, school board, business office. There are some insurance increases, like liability insurance, as well as contracted increases in health insurance and salary in this area. School administration, this would be the principals and the school offices. This increase is 13.65, that nobody's getting a 13.65% raise. That's because we had a position that was non-bargaining. It wasn't in we have 4 bargaining units. One of them is the administrators. I think there's 20 positions in that bargaining unit. The alternative ed director was not previously in that association, so they lived in a different article. I'm not sure, probably Article 1 is my guess. So that position moved into this article, and that contributed significantly to that increase. So the overall budget increase was minimal, but this article increased more. And it's not a new position, it's a position we've had. It's just changed, it's living in a different place in the budget now.
Claire, do you know what the COLA increase was per your contract?
The increase on the contract?
Ballpark?
They're different.
Based on the unions?
Yeah, it was negotiated, like I want to say 3 to 4 or 5%, depending on the bargaining unit. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't think anybody was more than 5 that I can think of, unless it was a correction. Last year we had some corrections, like we were way underpaying, like our food service, for example.
Yep. Yeah, we do the same thing. I was just curious what your average.
Yeah, usually the second and third, there are usually 3-year contracts, and usually the second and third year are 3 or 4%, depending on how it's negotiated.
Thank you.
But they're all available, and if anybody was interested in doing the math without waiting for an answer, they can go in there. Not saying you, but anyone who might be listening at home and wants to know, you can go find them and do that and check. Usually there's one position that's sort of a keystone that gives you a good. Sure. You really have to do it once. But transportation. So Article 8 is a 7.13% increase, again, salary and benefits, but also we had to upgrade our radio system. The White's Bridge part of Standish was an area affected by this. Our buses would sometimes lose contact with dispatch. Once they got over there, they'd have to relay through other buses. We hadn't really known how significant the problem was because our bus drivers they're not really a bunch of complainers. They just dealt with it because that's the way it's been. And so once we realized it was a problem, Dawn did a lot of work trying to figure out what the problem was, put a company on it. Some of it was clearing vegetation that had grown up over transmitters. Some of it was batteries. But at the end of the day, we had to upgrade the radio system. And I think it's taking care of a good amount of that. But I don't think it's ever going to be perfect just because of the distance and the terrain. And then auto insurance increased. I'm sure people at home understand that. And when you have a fleet of, 50 vehicles or more, it's gonna hit you harder there too. What we're finding is we're struggling to hire bus drivers right now. We were in a good place. We have people that have since sort of retired or moved on for different reasons. And I just think with everything that's gone on it's not an attractive job right now. And I think that's unfortunate because we have some great people doing these jobs, and and we provide training. So anyone out there who's ever thought about driving a bus, we could put you to work. I think the last thing I looked at is we might be down 5 drivers, and then we have people who go out on long-term leave, like they have to have surgery or their kid is having surgery. And so that's when we have to start doing things like delaying a bus route an hour or canceling a bus route, which we hate to do. But if we're canceling a bus route, that means the director, assistant director, dispatcher, and mechanics are probably all driving if we're doing that. And then the problem is then those folks aren't doing their other jobs, and it just can be a compounding factor. So,
Are there any principals or other administrators driving buses now?
not currently. There was one a couple of years ago who used to drive regularly, but he had left the district, and right now we don't have anyone in those roles. We have a couple of teachers who will help out with trips, like field trips or sports trips, and that actually is a big help. But no principals at this time. Let's see, we're almost done. Article 9, facilities and maintenance, 2.43% increase, which is largely health insurance and salaries. And I wrote in big letters on my page, bond. So we'll come back to this. The reason that isn't increasing dramatically, this is where we often would have put in $1 million or $1.5 million or $2 million to do something in the district, to pick away at some of the many facilities issues we have, and the board decided to take a different approach this year. And so we'll come back to that. So that leaves that as an area that's just basically continuing what we had this current year. Article 10, debt service. This is basically the Buxton School. I'm going to stop calling it the new Buxton School. I think it's 16 years old now. So it's not new, but it's the newest school, but it's not new. And it goes, the payments go down, I think 2029, 2028, 2029 will be our last payment, and that will be off the books. So that'll be good. And then all other expenses, non-instructional, well, there's nothing there, right? So we don't have anything that lives in that article, so there's no increase there. And then adult ed, kind of already talked about that, 2.24, it's really health insurance and salaries. And then nutrition, it's largely food that's driving large increase. So that is the sort of.
Excellent.
Are ed techs under special education, or are they, because I didn't see.
Yeah, special ed techs would be, I think, under special ed, right? And then regular ed techs, like an in-school suspension monitor or something, would be under Article 1, I believe, right? I'm looking at Dawn to make sure I'm saying that right. So, yeah, those would be in those 2 areas, basically. Whereas like school secretaries would be in the principal's office, because I believe they're associated with the office, so they'd be there.
Sometimes we have library helpers that are maybe under support.
Yeah, library helpers and other people, so they might float around, but generally those are the 2 areas. So I'm gonna have Dawn talk a little bit about the bonds. And before she does, because I always forget to say this, I want to set this up because especially in Standish, this is significant. There was a time, as you have heard, we finished 4th, as Georgia Jack is the 4th worst conditioned school in the state of 96 schools that applied. The first 2 burned. So it's really the 2nd worst school of schools that didn't burn to the ground. Old Orchard has number 3. The initial cycle came out after they rated, and they said they were going to fund the first 2, and then there was some doubt for a while about what was going to happen at the state level. And through some advocacy and some long talks and consultation, I believe they agreed to not change the funding law, formula or laws governing this until this cycle's over. So I still think that we're on pace for a project when they get to number 4. I wasn't so sure about 6 months ago if that was going to be the case. So when you hear about these bonds, I do want to say that that is still in the background as a very possible option, I think likely option if the community supports it. And any of these things, and Dawn is going to say more about them, do not get in the way of that. It's been considered as we're thinking about some of these projects that need to be done. What we're thinking about is Steep Falls is one blown boiler away from having to close if February comes and we have another cold winter, because that boiler is so old, you can't even get parts for it at this point. And why would we replace a boiler at a school that we're hoping in 5 years is closed, right? So anyway, I'll stop now and let Dawn take over.
So we're proposing 2 bonds. They are, our process was we had a subcommittee formed of our Finance and Facilities Committee. And then our facilities director, and we use a company called EEI, Energy Efficient Investments, that helped just look at every school top to bottom. And we looked at what were our critical needs and come up with a list, and then kind of pared that list down to say, what do we have to do? We don't want to close Steep Falls for 2 weeks and have the kids either not go to school or go to school in the middle school gym because the boiler isn't working. So we looked at the critical items and said, what can we do that we think maybe will be supported by the stakeholders? So we came up with this list. It is for, like I said, 2 bonds. One is an SRRF bond. That is a school revolving renovation fund. And like Clay said, we applied for that. Of our 9 applications that we submitted, only 1 was approved. It was for Georgie Jack. And they only approved half of what we asked for. So with an SRRF bond, they awarded us $554,575. Half of that is forgiven. So you get the funds, and half of it is forgiven, and the remaining amount is paid over 10 years at 0% interest. So the rest of that project for Georgie Jack, as I said, they only funded half of what the cost was, is in that larger capital bond. And these bonds are also 10 years. The rate depends on the market, so we won't know what that is until the application goes through. We're estimating between 3 and 4.5%, 5%. But I want you to know there are no payments in this proposed budget for these bonds. So we apply for them, the money comes through next year, but the first payment isn't due until the following year. So the first time you'll see an impact to the budget is in FY28. The SRF bond, as I said, is for the Georgie Jack rooftop unit, HVAC, and controls for that. Right now, those rooftop units aren't working at all. The air quality in Georgie Jack is not good. CO2 levels, what they like them to be at is at 1,000, and in Georgie Jack it's at 1,600. So it affects, how alert you are. So we want to fix that. And like Clay said, everything that we have here, if that big project is approved and we get to move forward, we can take these and move them into like a new project, or so that we're not just spending money and then, it goes to waste. No, we'll use these big pieces of equipment in any kind of new construction that we have. For the capital project bond, it's $8,205,023. We looked at the critical building repairs for schools located in all the towns. We've been getting some feedback for quite a while about the condition of our track and the field at our stadium field. And we felt if we were going to go for a bond, let's kind of include something for everybody. So for Buxton, it was Buxton Center roof, and their boiler, they have some control boiler issues, and the controls for the building as a whole. The roof, we actually have, it's like a lake on the top of Buxton Center, which is horrible. I mean, it's our newest building and we already have to replace a portion of the roof, so.
Would that not be under warranty?
Nope. We tried. It's not under warranty. It didn't get funded by the state because it wasn't considered a roof failure.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, we want it. It hasn't gotten to the point yet of saturation where but if we don't fix it, it's going to, and we're gonna have mold and all kinds of wonderful issues like that. For the Bonnie Eagle Middle School, which is in Buxton, we're doing the controls of the building. We want our facilities director to be able to just open his computer and see all the buildings and what the temperatures are and what the air looks like, and have control over turning this on, turning that off, fixing this, adjusting that. So there are controls in every building, so try to do that. In Leamington, HB Emery School, we're looking at a VRF and a boiler that needs to be replaced. In Hollis, we need boilers, we need hot water. We have a hot water issue, the AHU and HRU units, and the controls as well. And then in Standish, again, the Georgie Jack is the remaining portion of that HVAC rooftop units and the controls in the building. In Steep Falls, they're going to put in a VRF system, if it's passed, to be able to heat the building. And then a big ticket item is at the Bonnie Eagle High School. It's the track repair, the stadium field turf, and the controls. The track, I don't know if any of you have been to the track. It's pieces of it are coming up, and the kids take chunks of it and use it as frisbees. It's not safe. We're to the point where we can't have home meets on it anymore because it's a liability. It's not safe. It's not. I mean, I think we still have kids practicing on it, but it's probably not a good idea. And then we've had a lot of requests. Most of the districts around us now have the turf field. Our kids, a lot of stakeholders want the turf field, so we figured we would try to get them the turf field. It would give us so much more use. We have a lot of community groups that use that field. So soccer, there's just all kinds of them. By having the turf field, we can play more on that and give our other fields, they can rest, they can, grow, so it'll prolong the life of our other fields while adding all this extra playability to the turf field. I think that's all I have.
Say a little more.
What percentage of that $8 million bond is for the field turf?
The turf and the track,
Turf.
I don't have a breakdown. What I have is the turf and the track together. It's about 3.7. I can get you the exact number.
And I just want to follow up, the track piece of it was more than what I thought, because for years, this track has been slated for resurfacing, a refresh, and it keeps getting pushed off. And so now it needs to be replaced. And I think it's north of $1 million. Is it, Dawn? Does that sound right? Just for the track to have to be totally replaced at this point. I did want to mention a little, because people have been asking some questions, right? Like, why are there just these two bonds? Because I think, as Dawn said, the SRF bond is its own, it will be its own vote on in June 9th. And largely because of the way it's financed and the terms and everything, it made sense that should be a different project. The other projects, people are like, how come you didn't separate them out, right? Well, I'll say the school board decided not to separate them out, right? But I understand the decision, because I think if you start separating things out, it then asks people to make choices. And I've thought a lot about this. I think some people see the turf field as a luxury or something, but if we put a lot of money into our grounds right now, and over 10 years, we probably are spending $3 million to take care of fields and have to whatever you do to grass, and there's just so much. And don't our kids deserve better? Like, this is the one thing in this budget. Kids aren't going to see any benefit from a VRF, which is a variable refrigerant flow. It's like a heat pump. So Steep Falls, any school that's getting a VRF will actually have some cooling in the summer or the hot weather. So it helps supplement the boiler. I just want to add that. So kids will benefit from that a little bit, but we have state championship football teams. We have recognized, nationally track athletes, and our facilities are junk right now. We can't play anything really but football and soccer on the stadium field, and if we play on it too much, it gets torn up, worn out, and they have to let it rest. This turf field will allow our kids to be proud of something, and that would be nice, right? And I know people are like, oh, I don't know, I don't want to pay for that. Okay, then don't pay for it. But this is the one thing that benefits our kids directly. So could we have split them out? Yes, but then I think we're asking people to rank order what their choice is of what they think is most important. And I think our point is it's all important. So that's what I'll say about that. So there'll be a public hearing about the bond at the beginning of the budget meeting next Wednesday. So we'll start that at 6. It'll be a little bit like a school board meeting. And the board chair will open that session, and it's really, he'll open the hearing, ask if anyone has comment, people can come out and tell us how they feel about it and have their thoughts. And then once that's done, he'll close that hearing, and then we'll start the referendum, the town meeting, the budget meeting, which will go over all of these articles. Plus, I got called out at the last meeting for not mentioning this, but there are other articles, but there's the appropriation and then there's the permission to spend the money that you raise. And so there are more than 11 things on the ballot. But we'll have that process, and then it's June 9th, Election Day, is when the bonds would be voted up or down, these two, and then the budget vote that comes out of the budget meeting,
Which I totally understand why you don't want to separate them, and it all makes sense to me. But do you think that, on the other hand, that sometimes something like that could not get the money for the other stuff that sounds probably very important as well? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do. I understand.
It's like one of those, do we put it all together or do we separate it? And then, because we don't want to put anything else in jeopardy, but it would be nice, and we definitely deserve this, all these athletes do and stuff like that, but.
I understand, and it's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that. I also think, I just need to say this aloud because I think it's a possibility. I've been in this community for a long time, 24 years, and we have a lot of emphasis on sports. And here's the other scenario that I worry about. You separate them out and the field passes and the school stuff doesn't. And people can say, I don't think that would happen, but I'm gonna tell you, I think it could happen.
I do too.
So I think it's a risk either way to separate them. And maybe it's a risk to put them together. This is what the board decided to do. At the end of the day, the community will speak and vote how they need to vote. And it's not the end necessarily. If, let's say, hopefully it doesn't go down, but if it does get voted down, then they'll come back to the table, figure out what needs to be done, how to do it, and where to go from there.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I have some background to share that I think is important for the public to know, and as well as the board and the community in general. Bonnie Eagle is comprised of 5 towns, and we're a rural district. But even though we're rural, we're one of the largest in the state. Are we still around third size?
I think 4th last time I checked.
Third, fourth, our middle school might still be third, I'm not sure, but when you look at the different populations of all the towns combined with the 5 towns, we would be roughly the 4th or 5th largest community in the state if we were one city. I'm not recommending that we become a city, but what that does, the effect of that, is that it leverages our resources as 5 distinct communities to the fact that we can have a strong sports program. We have nurses in every building. We have more AP classes than a lot of other school districts in the state. And all of these other programs benefit from the leverage that we get by being 5 towns combined to support our educational system. So if we went along our different road as a separate community in Standish to fund education, we could not have anything close to what we have for the our education for our children. By combining these towns, we get a lot more than we would get separately. So with that in mind, there's a couple things we want to think about. And some of this, I don't expect you to have the answer, but I expect the superintendent and the board to be thinking about these things as you go forward. Artificial intelligence, it's going to change the workforce. For, what kind of education are we giving our kids if we don't think about how is the job market going to change, and are we preparing them Do they need more critical thinking skills? Many people are saying, well, you know, the value of a college education. It's great that you have these college programs. My daughter took advantage of those, but you do have vocational programs at Bonnie Eagle, and you participate in the pathways in Portland and the Westbrook Regional Vocational School. And many people are believing that emphasis on vocational training is one way to offset some of the risks of AI and job opportunities. So I want you to, and the board, to think about vocational education a lot more. You didn't really mention it anywhere in this, but it's there, and it's critically important that you think about it as we talk about our education. I'd like to go through a list of these.
Can I just respond to
sure,
that
go
one
ahead.
piece? So one thing I didn't talk about is at our elementary schools last year, our elementary principals repurposed a couple of positions, consolidated some classrooms to come up with STEM teachers, 3 STEM teachers, one that does the 3 Standish schools, one for Buxton and Hollis, and no, Buxton, because it's big enough, and then one for HB Emory and Hollis. And so kids get an extra dose of science, technology, engineering, and math, right? And some of that is sort of pre-vocational sort of learning. And we continue to be the second largest sender to Westbrook vote behind Westbrook, to the point where there's a problem every year with parking because Westbrook, and I'm not trying to complain, Westbrook, if you're watching, but they assign parking spots equally among the schools. We have 3 times as many kids as Gorham or something, and we have kids who want to drive and get to jobs. So we have great, robust participation. We have programming in our schools that trends that way. So by not mentioning, I don't want you to get the idea we don't focus on it. I think we're actually right where we need to be, and we could always do more, but I think we have a good
I think
focus
the
on it.
public needs to know that.
Yep, absolutely.
When you look at the disposition of how much each community pays towards the school system, Standish is around 37, maybe %, something like that, over a third. And there are a lot of people in Standish that keep raising, well, what are we getting out of this? We fund a large part of the school budget. When the Buxton Elementary School was built, it has a community center aspect. If we're going to build a new school building, can't that be made a community center to benefit people in Standish in some way? There is a special program that the state offers for community schools that are not just public schools, but function as a community center. And I would urge you to consider that, and the board consider getting some of that building, whatever might come, to be focused as a community center to benefit the community. Part of that is what we call family education. You mentioned adult education. In the United States as a whole, there are more adults without a basic high school education than are in kids in K through 12 combined. So there are a lot of adults in our 5 towns that don't have a basic high school education. In terms of bang for the buck, in terms of economic impact, educating those adults not only helps those individual adult students, but also their whole family, and lifts the whole family out of poverty and gives them much more opportunities. And the kids see their parents studying and learn better role models. So there's a lot of benefits. I would urge you to consider more support for adult education. There are, in many communities in this area, foundations. Bonnie Eagle does not have. I would call it the Bonnie Eagle Education Foundation, or Where's the Beef? You know, if we have a Bonnie Eagle Educational Foundation, I would urge you as superintendent to use your bully pulpit to work with town councils and community members and businesses to set up a Bonnie Eagle Educational Foundation to help support. It will help reduce the burden on the cities, the towns that are part of the district, and help provide more opportunities to our students. So we need to have a Bonnie Eagle Educational Foundation established. Our robotics team has historically been one of the best in the world, in North America, consistently. But I am not sure that we're doing enough to support them to incorporate robotics into our regular curriculum. And this has been something that's come up. They're a great team. They have great coaches. They've done wonderful things. They learn more than robotics. They learn business skills. They learn fundraising and community activation skills. I mean, there's a lot of things that they learn besides robotics. So that's a great program, and we ought to let people know more about the robotics team and how proud we should be about our robotics team as well as our sports teams. Bonnie Eagle has a feeding program. There are a lot of kids that are food insecure. Not every town nearby is like Wyndham. They don't have a summer feeding program, but we do. Are they
Well,
historically?
we have to qualify, and I do think we're going to qualify again, but the reason other towns don't is because they didn't qualify for the program, so, yeah.
It's important to maintain that. Proficiency education has kind of gone by the way. There was some emphasis a few years ago. I think it's important. One of the elements of proficiency education partly was civic engagement, and I'm concerned that our students aren't participating enough in their local community. We have the benefit of a school board that has for a number of years had student members of the school board, and very significantly, those members have not only been elected to the school board, but two of them became chair and one became a state representative. I would think that I would urge the school board to work with the member communities to emphasize student involvement at the local town government level. You can expand on what the student members do on the school board into town government, and it will promote civic engagement. I think it's important for our students to understand their local government and have some contact with it. When we have the consolidation of the new school that's built, one of the things that concerns many parents of special ed students is that they're bused to Buxton. There are kids that spend too much time on the bus, and if we had a community school or a better consolidated elementary program in Standish, we could reduce the time of the bus for special education students. That's some of the aspect that to be considered in that community school program. Fry Island, I don't think they have any suits with us now, is that right?
Yeah,
They kind of been quieted out for a while, but you know, you should not neglect them. I didn't hear anything mentioned about offering Fry Island adult ed or other programs, and I would
just stop you, Mr. Deacon?
address that.
When we, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your thoughts, but I just want to say, like, when I'm standing in front of Fry Island, I make sure Fry Island knows about those opportunities. So we try to focus these on the town that we're in. So we absolutely do offer, we've been having a partnership with them for recreation programming in the summer. They have access to buses. They actually bought a bus for $1 so they could have their own transportation. We've offered to go to the island to do our presentation like this. They typically have us come in through Zoom, and we have 20 people that'll join. So I just want to show you we do try to foster that relationship, and I think it's shown by having less people. I don't think we're ever going to pass the budget in Fry Island, but I think we have a few people who don't turn out to vote against it because we take the time to explain what our challenges are. So I appreciate the feedback, but I think we do that.
To be a good district, we need to worry about the other towns and their participation as well. That's how I feel. Transportation, historically, we had the best transportation department. There have been issues, accident that have affected that. And then I do want
to... Can I just say, I disagree. I think we had a significant thing that happened, a tragic thing that happened. Our bus drivers are excellent. They are the best. They still are the best. There's fewer of them because it's not an appealing position. And if we let a statement like that stand, it's not going to help anything. We have excellent drivers who do everything right every day. And we had a tragic thing that happened that has cast a pall over all that. But I really have to object to going down that road. We have a great department and a great bunch of drivers.
I haven't finished my statement. What I'm asked you to focus on is safety. And are we really doing enough to promote safety? There are new cars that people can buy that have radar and all of these things that help avoid accidents. And I would think that some of this, it's not just MSAD 6, but all across the country, there's a lot more that can be done to protect the safety of students. Yep. And I would urge that to be addressed. And we do know that historically, one of the big questions a lot of people ask is, where do we stand with our budget in terms of the state average? MSAD 6 has for many years consistently been able to say that our cost per pupil has been below the state average.
Continue to be below state average. Did you get the mailer in your mailbox?
I gave it to
Yeah, there's a listing, and we're definitely closer to the bottom than to the top.
Right, so even though our budget for the school is some people would say significantly high, we spend more, even though enrollment declines, we're still consistently below the state average, and that it's a testament to the fact that you're trying to do more with less all the time. I thank you for that. And I know that there are many hardworking people in the school department, having been a school board member in the past. There's a lot of unsung heroes, people that do lots of things. It's been a tough number of years for people in education. And I thank all of the workers, the custodians, transportation, ed techs, teachers, administrators, and everyone else, nurses, and everyone they care about the kids. I know that they care about the kids, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Lisa.
Quick question. The enhancements in classroom studies, materials, technology, what group does that fall under?
Question.
I'm assuming you have one for special ed and then one for.
Yeah, some would come out of special ed, but if it's generally for the classroom, what is the article? For like instructional technology things, is that what you're kind of talking about?
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Improving the technology and the materials available to the students in classes.
It was on Article 3.
Article 3. I thought it was at the bottom of a page, right? Oh, career and technology.
That's career.
Student and staff support. So Article 5, I think, has instructional technology.
There you go.
The other thing that is applied to that area, that's an area that was often under budgeted in the past, and we would have these different grants and one-time things, and we would find a way to offset things like firewalls and all the technical stuff that's not classroom stuff. But and then when we refresh devices, those are resold and we get some money back. So there is a capital reserve account for technology, and sometimes large purchases are taken out of that. That's why I'm bringing it up. So something like what I think you're talking about is projectors are starting to be replaced by these touch panel TV screens.
Yep.
And we're going through the process of upgrading all the schools to those. And I think that's coming out of the capital reserve account, not out of the general fund budget, money that was already raised or came from another source. So that isn't actually in this budget, but that's something that's going to be done in every classroom to improve the teacher and student experience.
Okay. And then one more question, the academic data that you presented, the metrics, was that collected from the state, or was that collected school by school based on?
Most of it is well, I don't know, it's a mix. Anything that references the main through-year assessment, so the little line graphs and the bar graphs, those come from the state. There's a dashboard.
Yep.
And anyone can go in and look at it and pull. Some of those come right from the dashboard. The math program, reveal program data is local, something we collected locally. And of course, some of our high school data is local, and then the graduation rate is verified by the state. So it's sort of a mix, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, and the reason I ask is the graphs look good, but I don't know the population of students that this represents. That could be 13 students. It could be, I know some of them say 100 students.
Yeah, I can tell you that generally right now, a cohort like the 7th grade, right, is about 240 kids-ish. That's kind of where we're at. And it's like our kindergarten class this year is like 212. So that was less than we've had. I think it's our senior or junior class might be the largest at like 250. So they're sort of settling in the low 200s is a typical cohort. So I would say any of those charts that list a grade level, it's going to be over 200 kids.
Okay.
Up to 240, maybe, depending on the grade level. It's a large sample size typically, right, compared to other districts that have smaller enrollment. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I'll just add, we're available if anyone has questions. We're happy to sit down and break any of this down with people. It's all posted there's a budget folder on our website. We started FAQs. As questions are asked, we'll answer them and post them there. So make sure to show up next week on Wednesday, and then vote on June 9th.
Good night, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming and explaining all this to us. You do an amazing job with this. I'm always impressed with every number and everything that you have to go through to put this together, and the time that it must take. So I just want to thank you from Standish anyway for doing that.
Thank you. And Dawn and her team do an incredible amount of work. I get up here and talk about it, but they do the hard work of putting it all
Thank you.
together. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah. Anything, anybody on the council want to bring up, talk about? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Mayor, second?
Second.
All in favor? We are adjourned.